morning, everyone, and welcome to American Scouts Morning Coffee or Tea with American Scouts on a Wednesday, brought to you by our friends at Reckless Coffee Roasters. Go check them out at recklesscoffeeroasters.com. As always, Wednesday. So, what am I going to do? I'm going to be the number one greatest dad. And I have personally observed number two very closely during the birthday bash. Gordo's with us. Gordo, what's happening?
Did I win the moniker or did I move down to third or fourth?
No, you did the typical birthday party dads things, like occasionally called into duty, but normally just roaming around.
Social drinking.
Yes, there we go. Oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah, no, God, man, you live out there. So it was like, Matusha always tells me I'm a couple of hours out. I'm like, yeah, you want to see somebody a couple of hours out? It's Gordo.
Yeah, it doesn't help that like all the roads like dip in and come out. It's like, I live in or surrounded by cornfields, as you know. But like for some reason, all the roads here act like we're like in the middle of a valley or something.
I was telling Angie, it reminded me like some of the areas look like, I'm like, dude, if you get like broken down over here, there's no cell service. Remember that X-Files episode? They go into this house where like everybody's deformed and stuff like that. I don't know, like any X-Files fans are back here. I was like, it reminds me of that episode. One of these houses could be like that kind of a thing. But yeah, like beautiful area overall. Jersey is with us this morning with Japanese
today.
Ohio? Is that what it is? Like as in Ohio, or we need like when it's a different language that I don't know, like Arabic I could pull off the other day, but I can't. Well, I know how that all goes in Japanese.
Yeah, with the little
we need also
hat.
like the O hat.
The O hat. I don't know what it's called.
So you had to do it Ohio. I don't think that's how it goes. So ideally, we have to get like the pronunciation. John should be joining us. As we all know, John has matured right in front of our eyes and has like business meetings and stuff like that now. So he just got called into a call real quick right before the show. So he'll be hopping right back in. But we'll start. There's a lot to get to, actually, even though Arnie is in the witness protection program. There's a lot of other stuff to talk about. But
oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, what do you make of that, by the way, before we get into that? I just find like it's like, you look at Discord, Kazi Z and stuff like that. It's like, I don't even know what he's not going to come out and be like, okay, guys, here's how we're going to play. He's just going to come out and say the generic stuff anyway. So why even anticipate it? Damn. I mean, I want to hear from him too. So we speculate less.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm not like over here on pins and needles waiting for him to show up and say something.
Well, I think too, like we all thought, and we said it last week, that, if we were going to move, we were going to move before Euro started. And we were going to wrap up our business, or at least get our high profile signings and move guys along or sign the new contracts relatively quickly before the competition starts. And that doesn't look like it's happening, which is a little nerve wracking because I think everybody agrees that we need a couple of positions. And at the very forefront of that is the fact that our brand new manager, who seemed so happy to join the ranks, just hasn't addressed fans yet. So I don't know how to take it. When did Jurgen? Do we know exactly like how many days from when Jurgen signed to when he talked?
Not really, no. I almost feel like it was imminent, but it was a mid-season one, wasn't it? So it's kind of like slightly different. You're in the thick of things. Like,
you've got to get
like
in.
you can't be. He couldn't have been gone for 2 weeks anyway because he would have a game to manage. So I think that one was slightly different.
What if he wants he asked to address all the players first? So we'll have to wait until the first week of August for him to make a press conference.
Yeah, I guess Slot literally talked more about Liverpool before joining us. Even Robo said none of the players have heard from him. I mean, that's the thing. I think I was saying this. I was telling my brother yesterday, like Jose Mourinho signed. Next day he was at the freaking Champions League final, and the next day he was in the freaking Turkish stadium getting the crowds going and stuff like that. I mean, most managers like show up and do it. This is kind of a different scenario because we did a long time ago. I really thought I knew nothing was going to happen over the Champions League. I understood, when we're talking with Mateusz, like the June 1st thing. So we had to wait for that. I really thought there would be something popping up over here. Speaking of popping up, there's John, the business.
It is.
What's going on, man?
Yeah, got roped into a last second meeting about some interns asking some questions, and I'm sure you and Gordo can relate. It was not worth a meeting. It was something that could have been asked by email. So I apologize.
I am really appalled in this day and age of technology that people do not want to just message back and forth real quick, but they want to get into a call. No, let's not do a call. That's why the technology was invented, so that we don't have to do a call. Just you text, I text back. You text, I text back.
From the words of my intern, this would have been better explained. I was like, okay. And then I was like, when I heard what he had to say, I was like, you couldn't explain this via email. Like it, like I just went to our conversation with Eric yesterday, Tim. Like we were and I was explaining to him some stuff about video editing, which I am an absolute novice about. And I'm like, hey, I managed to explain that shit pretty well. So
I mean, if somebody had questions, they would be like, how about this? And then we would move on. Yeah, I always get people who are like, let's get in a call sometimes. Like, no, let's not.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like a sales pitch thing. Like, so I can give you a sales pitch. And I'm like, no, this is exactly why I don't want it.
We always do the meeting before the meeting, which annoys me. We're gonna have a meeting so that we all are on the same page for the meeting we're about to have. It's like, what the...
Hey, maybe Arnie's having the meeting before the
yeah, that's what I'm assuming. Him and Edwards are like, let's have the meeting before the meeting, so we'll get our shit straight. Everybody says the same shit. I mean,
they actually have to turn him into a puppet before he makes the first appearance, so it's not as shocking, right? Like Edwards is currently sewing the little strings on his hands so he can walk around.
I understand. Like I say, I would have liked to hear more, but I guess I'm not as. Mine is more personal and selfish more than anything else. That that way we would speculate less. One would have more to talk about. Two, and then we would speculate based on what he said, at least, as opposed to like trying to read between the lines and speculate that way, as opposed to what we're doing now, which is like a lot of shots in the dark. But mind you, while all this is happening, business is being taken care of apparently, which is fine because it's not Slot addressing these, is Edwards taking care of these. So we have made another contract offer to Adrian. What do you make of this, John? I personally was kind of shocked because I think we always thought that he was being kept around as he was probably going to be like in the goalkeeping staff or some kind of staff in the future, and Klopp valued these kind of personalities more than Edwards, especially financially.
Well, it looks like Edwards valued them as much too, since obviously with Klopp gone, this isn't like a sentimental signing on his part. So maybe, I know we take the piss out of Adrian every time we could, but maybe he is such a presence in the locker room where, he felt, Edwards is definitely like a data-driven, left brain kind of guy who prefers more facts and figures over, let's say, something like, emotional capacity and shit like that. But maybe Adrian's impact on the locker room is tangible enough that even Edwards recognizes it. Like, hey, we got to keep these guys. We got to keep this guy for for what he brings in terms of keeping everyone together. That's the only way I could look at it, honestly.
And I personally think Adrian gets like too much criticism for nothing. He's Gomez in goal, if you will. I mean, maybe he doesn't play as well as Gomez does out on the field, but I feel like he has not been terrible. And if he's your third keeper, I guess he could possibly be your second keeper. It's not a bad deal to have somebody. And I would also argue, Gordo, that somebody like that are even more important now because of the change. To have some of those guys who are constants in the locker room as leaders might be even more important now because a manager is changing. So you want to have a couple of those pillars in the locker room to hold the ceiling up, if you will.
Yeah, I honestly think it's twofold, and that one is probably the one that stands out the most. Is not only did you're transitioning into a very, tumultuous in terms of emotions, in terms of the unknown of the future. Because I think before April, I don't think anyone really knew who Arne Slot was, and now he's the manager of Liverpool. You've also got like the goalkeeping coaches leaving. You've got your second string goalkeeper basically saying if there's a good offer, he wants to take it. That's what he wants to do. So I could see Adrian being there to assist with the goalkeeping coach to come in, because I think that's probably what he, you can't ask anybody else to really be the transitional between the new coach and the players. And you're certainly not going to ask your starting goalkeeper to kind of do that. So I think Adrian kind of feels like that liaison between the new coaching staff and the goalkeepers. And also you want to make sure that you at least have a second option if you can't get somebody in the transfer window and your second in command basically decides he's going to be a first string goalkeeper somewhere else. So I think it's a two-faceted approach in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, he's ultimately, like the worst thing ever. Like Matush says, I think there are many worse things than Adrian extension Saidu. I mean, he's the third goalkeeper. Like, how often do we sit over here and be like, we can't win with this third goalkeeper? I think it's just because, he is there. He's like, we just want, like, some people just want him gone from the club.
We don't know what we don't know what the contract is either. It could be peanuts, it could be an extension to, you got the ability to play this year, maybe move into a coaching role next. You don't know what that looks like. I laugh because I think John, like 4 or 5 weeks ago, there was that hit piece that was like, Adrian is going to Spain. Goodbye. And like you read the article and all it says is like, Liverpool haven't approached me yet, and I don't know what I'm gonna do.
And I think maybe that's why. I mean, like I say, I'm assuming it is peanuts. And why is why not sign this dude? Maybe he was thinking about going to Spain and stuff like that. And they're like, why aren't you gonna go to Spain when we'll pay you a little bit over here? You're gonna be a backup wherever you go. And like Adrian is not going as a starting keeper to any team. And obviously, he has a great relationship with the guys. If you watch any videos of the team, like pre-game, post-match, and stuff like that, you can see he's been there the longest. So he's been there, throughout the time, has a good relationship with the players. Why not keep a guy like that? You hang out with the guys you like. You still get paid. Be the big brother in the locker room. I don't know. I find it as a no-brainer, John. And I think normally, if it wasn't Adrian by name, I don't even think it would be big news.
Yeah, and I think people are making too much of a big deal out of it, given Adrian's reputation. But hey, let's be real. The guy's contributed throughout his time at Liverpool. Like he was the goalkeeper when we won the Super Cup. He contributed when we won the league. He was also the goalie when we won the Community Shield, which was against City. That's no laughing matter, right? So he did his part here. He's not a freeloader. That's just what did Sir Z say in the Discord earlier today, like eating burgers like Calvin Phillips, like on sideline. He actually did his part in terms of us winning trophies during the golden era. And listen, we've been following sports for a long time. We need those glue guys that's gonna keep everyone humble. Like obviously we have like the Trents, the Verges, but some of these guys who aren't necessarily in like super noteworthy leadership positions do have stuff to offer in terms of that regard. And I feel like Adrian is one of those guys, kind of like those Milners, and who just keeps everyone together. And I feel like, just piggybacking off of Gordo's point, it's more of ensuring the most seamless transition in terms of a turnover between managers more than anything else. And which is why I'm like, definitely just keep him.
I think so too. I mean, like I say, if it was not Jen, I don't think it would be as big of a news. There was also like a statement from the club today in terms of players that are leaving. I don't know if you saw the names, Gordo. I mean, the ones, especially from the youth players, was Adam Lewis, and the Polish Messi is gone. I wish this news came out so we could have asked the Polish Prince over here. But the Polish Messi, we barely knew you. And this is why it's impossible.
I had to figure out for a second who that was, Tim. Sorry. I was like, oh, right, him.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, this is exactly why I find it really hard to get really like, "Wow, he's gonna come, he's gonna be huge" and stuff like that. Because before you know it, or you think it's one of those deals where he was hyped up too early, and that could be tough on a kid who I think was like 16 or something at the time when all the thing was going about him.
Yeah, and the youth, like coming up in the youth system, especially at a team like Liverpool, at a time like this, where there's only a handful of teams that can basically just revitalize their team with other like high caliber players with experience. It's tough. I mean, how often do you see something on any website, let alone like a Liverpool related website, where it's the 2002 Youth Cup winners? Like, where are they now? And like, oh, he bags groceries. This guy plays in League 4. It's like it's almost impossible. You have to be really a real shining star and come into a team when there's an injury situation and cement yourself, which is almost impossible to do. Like, let's look at Connor Bradley. Like, he makes the entry because we basically are exhausted in those positions, right? Like, both of our wing backs are injured. We've got Gomez filling in for anybody who drops down, so he can't be over on the right. We bring up Connor Bradley. He plays really well in his cameo against Arsenal, and we start using him, and he becomes consistent. Still, he might not play again. I mean, you can think of all the players that you can, like, look at Flanagan, right? Like, he came through the ranks just like that in an injury crisis situation, cemented himself, and then we never saw him again and shipped him off. So it's like it's impossible for these young players sometimes to go through. So it doesn't surprise me sometimes when you see these names that are really shining stars. I just hope for them that they find a club that they can, get some minutes in and make a career out of, because the amount of kids that system chews up and spits out, not just for us, but just the entire league. Those, U18 teams, I mean, these kids give up everything. They move to this country. They you read all the books and all the autobiographies of these players, and, they give up their family lives and they're living with some host family. And if it doesn't work out, what now? They've got no job. They didn't go to school. So just hope it works out for them.
Yeah, that's why I think it's like kind of like tricky. Richard Hutchison is the comedian of the morning. He wants all American players and managers at Liverpool Soccer Club. Thanks, Richard. I don't, because first of all, I'm not an American. Second of all, I'm not all for that. I can take a couple of Turkish players, I guess, just for flavor. But apart from that, no. But thanks, Richard. Thanks for joining us. Here's another one. Here's another one.
Speaking of comedy.
Speaking of comedy, Naby Keita has been voted flop of the season by his fellow Bundesliga players. And I find this weird because, I mean, just based on your guys' reaction alone, too, is it because of how he went out? And because, I mean, we've had players in the past who got injured very often, and they never accumulated this much. I don't even know if it's hate, but, like maybe resentments or whatever, and almost taking pleasure in their future demise in some ways. Whereas, I mean, what is it, do you think, John? Because, I mean, that's funny because I put that up and then, obviously go to share this and, like, why is it that we're like, sucker? Whereas normally, what do players have left? We don't like look back and be like, sucks to be you.
I think, listen, I don't hate Keita. I was one of those guys. I was one of those Naby Keita stands back then who would be like, he probably should be starting every game as much as possible. I was an idiot back then, by the way. But then, still am, to be fair, still am. But, listen, I feel like the laughter comes from his reputation at Liverpool, where I don't know if you guys remember the Napoli thing, where I think he had it was an injury that can force him off the field. I think it had something to do with his it was a bottom down, maybe his leg or something, and then I think he had to be stretchered off after a few minutes of playing. And I think he just came back from injury at the time. I forget. If anyone in the comments remembers that moment, you could remind us. But I feel like it's his reputation of literally just coming back and then pulling something within 5 minutes. And then literally he was Thiago before Thiago. I have a feeling he played a bit more, but then in terms of, because he played more, the more injuries he accumulated throughout that period of time, and the more people were like he's injured again. And then the fact he went to Werder Bremen, and then I think in the first few games he got injured again. So
There was a fallout too, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was a fallout. Yeah,
he didn't.
That's the reason. But go ahead.
He didn't want to play. Like he didn't show up to the team. They basically I think it was a cup, the Doko Pokal or whatever, and he was told he wasn't going to be in the lineup,
Yes.
and so instead of like going with the rest of the team, he just went home. I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
Yeah, or he said something. They were like, "Well, then don't come then," or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was, but Gala says because he became with so much promise. And yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. We waited. We're like, it's gonna be so great. People watch more Leipzig than ever in their lives. And then, go ahead, John.
Yeah, he was hyped up into oblivion. To answer your question, too.
Yeah, I think he was, but
taking the number 8 too.
I don't know. Is Thiago gonna get the same hate if he went on to Saudi Arabia or something like that?
Well, because every time he played, it was good, right? Whereas like every time Naby played, it was like, what are you doing? Like, please don't pass the ball to that guy.
I mean, there were some moments you could see why we got him and why he would fit so well, with the counter pressing and stuff like that. That United game, there's like, what was it, like Bournemouth or somebody, where like, there were some games that was just like so good. And I feel like sometimes he was thrown under the bus. That's and I think, though, at the end of the day, it is the number of injuries, but more often than not, didn't he also have like a deal where we almost said, okay, he's not gonna play anymore, kind of a deal, where like he had a fallout with Klopp or something like that. And I know the national team kind of screwed him over too. They played him even when he was injured and stuff like that. But do you put that on him, Gordo? Because as a player, you can say, I just can't play right now, and not, especially when you know yourself and it's going to screw up your professional career because you're like, I'm already freaking injured. If I play again, it's going to get even worse.
That's a good question because sometimes you're like, you're influenced by the people around you, and also realize that like clubs are temporary, but your national team is something that you could always play for until you retire. And so you don't want to burn those bridges because, there are players that you're like, oh, they'll tell you like playing for my country is like a huge, like I'm never going to give that up because it's such a big accolade and that's what I want to do. And that means more to them than putting on a club shirt, which is fine. Sometimes we like to think that these players will like, die by the crest on their chest, and it's not always the case. So a little bit you have to put it on them, but like sometimes it's the people around you. With Naby though, like everyone's saying in the comments, like I think all of us kind of wanted him to do well, right? Like it was exciting. He went and asked Steven if he could take the number 8, and Steven said yes, and I think that's kind of didn't help the situation because that overhyped him as well, and so it was unfortunate because I think like Gally had said, it was a no-brainer at the time because he was a great player for Leipzig.
I mean, that's the thing. He did have some stuff. I just remember this. I don't know if this is a quote or anything like that, but I remember there was some debate in terms of why he was like, even when fit. I mean, for a while he was fit and not playing, and I kind of put that on. If he's in the squad, you would think it's not a practicing issue. I just felt like if you don't practice well, or if you don't practice full speed, you're just not going to go into the game for a club, and that's kind of like has been the rule for everybody. And obviously your agent is not going to be happy when you're not playing and stuff like that. But I mean, that's the thing, like when we signed them, we were all freaking excited, couldn't wait for him to come over and stuff like that. And maybe he might have set himself up to fail in some ways, John. He knew, I mean, on top of all that expectation, he just put the cherry on top by taking number 8, whereas that was like pressure that he really didn't need to put on himself.
No, he didn't. And listen, there was a period, and bringing back to what you said about Thiago, Thiago was out for long periods of time as well. But I feel like the difference between him and Keita is that Thiago's period of sustained play led us somewhere really significant, which is a Champions League final and within 1 point of taking the league. Like that stretch where he played consistently towards the end of the 2021-2022 season was some of the best midfield play I've seen since Stevie G was playing, right? So that's like a really key difference, and what we thought Keita was going to be. And to piggyback off your point of the number 8 jersey, Tim, it's why I'm kind of worried for Szoboszlai. Like, I know it's just the first season, right? He's going to be transitioning to a new manager soon. But then, coming into a new country, coming into a big team, I feel like you should do as much as possible to give yourself the best chance to succeed. And, looking at the guy who wore the shirt before you, maybe you should have gone like, hey, listen, maybe I should just slow down a bit on this and wear the number or wear a different number. But on the flip side, you can also say like, hey, I like this guy's hunger. I like this guy's belief in himself to put this number on, knowing who wore it in the past, knowing the history of this number, and then, taking the challenge kind of deal. It works both ways. So listen, it depends on if you have a glass half full, glass half empty kind of perspective.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know, like, where are you at with that, Gordo? Like, I don't know if I say, I don't know, like, I know some people do, and, we have him on, we had him in the chat before, we had him in Discord before, where they're like, oh, like, he believes in himself, and stuff like that. I mean, I'm all for confidence, but I feel like a player should look more to earn certain things, and, instead of saying, coming in cocky from the get-go. Maybe that's kind of like my personality. I will just rather come in, prove myself, and then like get those accolades, as opposed to come in and be like, that's right, I'm the shit, and like start the whole process that way. I mean, Tish is probably right. He was probably like, I mean, the number 8 bar has really been lowered. So it's not what it used to be. Let me just hop over this real quick, kind of a thing. But where are you at with that, Gordon? Like, do you like that in a player where they're like, like they always talk about like a youth player didn't want to come in to fight for the spot for more and stuff. Nobody's an idiot. Like I wouldn't tell my son, yeah, go over there. I'm sure you'll be well for the starting spots. Yeah, go where you can play, where you're gonna be happy and stuff like that. I just don't buy some of that has to believe in himself crap.
Well,
as a number 2 dad, what would you tell Finn?
If you could actually back it up, right? Because I know a lot of idiots that are really confident in themselves. I have a lot of friends that would gladly wear the number 8 for Liverpool, having not played a single minute of professional sports. It's like, so I think that people will too. They'll read like books, like a Michael Jordan book or something, or LeBron James, and like, you got to believe in yourself. Like, yeah, well, you also have to have like natural God gifted ability and talent as well. So like, it is a facet of being a good player, but it's not everything. And if you don't have it to back it up, if you don't have the play to back it up, and you don't have the drive, because a lot of what you hear, and it could just be coming from the agent and stuff, but he sounds a little whiny, and you can't be super confident and also, like, for lack of a better term, a little bitch, right? It's like because
okay, I was trying to find a word like prima donna or something like that, and then you just came up with bitch. So yeah, that works.
So like sometimes like the players that are like they really believe in themselves are like, fine, I will prove like this is a challenge. I'll prove you wrong, instead of just like sulking. And I think that's the difference, is like you can pretend, you can put on this bravado of I believe in myself, but then like things don't go my way and now I don't want to play. I'm not saying that's who he was, but a lot of like the quotes and stuff coming out of the camp, and then he kind of does the same thing at Werder Bremen. It's like it just seems a little like it doesn't have it to back it up.
Do we have this for the Premier League? We definitely need something like this here, says Liverpool Deals. We have this every freaking Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning. The comedy continues. The comedy never ends over here at American Scouser.
Especially now that it's summer.
Like, yes, just ask Richards. He knows all about it. Okay, here we go. Speaking of comedy over here, this is just, I saw this and I was like, oh, I gotta talk. I'm like, I'm glad it's Wednesday tomorrow, because I gotta talk to Gordo about this, because we kind of like talk about this. Yes, smash that thumbs up, people, is correct. Well said. Well said. Thank you. Bickler would say too, but he's not here right now. So Manchester City says, you know what? Those are not violations. Those were our rights, basically. What do you make?
I'm sorry. I broke
What do you
character.
make of that? What do you guys make of that? I mean, when I saw that, I mean, here's the thing, though. When I saw, as I read the rest of that article that came out, and I was like, you know what? In 10 years, probably they're going to be right. But, John, I mean, in terms of like we're like headed towards the Super League. Like we signaled, got on the left fast lane, and we're just speeding towards it. Is how I look at it. But what do you make of it, John? That City is suing the Premier League and then saying, "Well, you guys didn't do this in the past. Now you guys are looking at the finances."
I feel like it's like the final throes of a desperation kind of Hail Mary, because I feel like, based on how I understood the article, and anyone in the comments and you two can correct me if I'm horribly wrong, they basically kind of admitted to doing what they're being accused of doing. So the fact that they did, now they're just trying to gaslight everyone into thinking that we're not the problem. You guys are the problem. Like 19 teams plus the governing body, which is the FA, the Premier League, all that is the problem, not us. So listen, I know this is a platform we want to grow, and if I really say what I want to say, we're gonna get banned. But listen, the sheer hubris and arrogance of the way that they approach this is just on brand for this club. Let me just say, it's just absolutely nail on head. Like, listen, when we look at rumors for football, throughout Twitter, looking for headlines and all that, you always tell me, Tim, like, who is the source? Like, is this legit and stuff like that? If you give me this quote and you ask you ask me to attribute this to a certain team, I would immediately associate this with Manchester City and their organization. So listen, I believe it 100%. Extremely arrogant, all that. So listen, the only question is what is going to happen after this, which is obviously what is going to be a point of discussion for the morning shows and other shows, even as it goes on, because I think the date for the hearing was set this November, right?
Yes.
And I don't know if you guys saw the piece of news a few weeks ago, or was it a week ago? I don't know, that Pep I think he's done his last year. So
Pep probably saw that. They were
right.
Time to go.
But then the news about Pep came out before this. So when I saw that, I was like, yeah, there's probably something that's cooking up right now, and then this comes in. So listen, it's probably leading towards where we want it. But then listen, I don't want to jinx it.
I mean, that's funny though. We should have a segment like that, like guess the quotes, come up with the quotes, and then guess who said it, kind of thing. Which club said this, kind of thing. I mean, here's the thing, right? The money, as big as these clubs, as big as Premier League is getting, as with the money, this is what it's going to be. So this is the future we're going to. The future is more, sadly, owners like City probably, Gordo, than the other way around. I don't think it's turning the other way, and they're comparing it to like United. It's like, dude, you can't fill a fucking stadium. So it's one thing. It's too bad that you don't have fans. It'd be one thing. It's not like Premier League is coming in and saying like, wait, you guys didn't sell that many jerseys, which I feel like that's going to be the next scam that City will come up with. Some rich guy who happens to live in Arab Emirates just placed an order for 1 million jerseys or something like that. He is giving away to like kids in need or some crap like that. But I mean, is this them trying to kind of like in the corner, but just kind of like trying to throw punches at the same time?
That's what it is. It's funny that like for the longest time they're like, we did nothing wrong, and now they're like, well, the rules aren't fair. Okay, so that means you broke the rules then, right? Because like you've totally changed your stance to saying from like we didn't do anything wrong to the rules are against us, which if you're saying that means that you broke the rules. Like you admit now that was the first time that you've seen that from City, where they haven't taken the stance of we have done nothing wrong, we'll fight for ourselves. And then they said some quote of like being bullied by the majority, or like the majority has voted against us and it's like tyranny or whatever. And that sounds a whole lot like democracy, in my opinion.
Right.
Like,
well, they're not clear on the concept of democracy or tyranny over there.
Shaky, a bit shaky for them, yeah.
So, it was like definitely a chink in the armor, because I think for myself, and I probably have said it on here, and you guys might agree, but like I always felt like when we saw Pep decide he was going to leave, that's when you knew something at the back was happening. Because one of the charges they have is that he's getting money from elsewhere, right? He's got his contract with Man City. He's paid over the table by that, but there's something else in the background where he's receiving money. So if he's receiving that much, a man in his later career, he's done it all, right? He's been Barcelona's manager, he's been Bayern Munich's manager, he's been City's manager. He's probably not looking to leave if he's making a considerable amount more than he's making anywhere else. And so I felt personally that when Pep was like, "Yeah, I think this is my last year, I'm going to walk out," things were already starting to crumble. And then this comes out on the heel of Pep saying, this might be my last year. And that's the biggest chink in the armor. It looks like City has just admitted that they have done something wrong.
Yes.
And then instead of saying like we didn't do anything wrong, they're saying, well, the rules are unfair. That's why
the rules are wrong. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's basically what they're saying. Football Flashback says if state-owned businesses can pay as much sponsorship money as they want to state-owned clubs, there'll be no longer any point of regulation. And that's that's basically the problem, because they're saying basically that they should not be able to determine how much a contract is worth, but that's when the other prince that owns that company puts an ad. They're like, yes, I want my name inside of the socks of City players because that's how I roll. Here's $1 billion for that. There's no end to that. So there has to be some regulation. But here's my thing is like I say, as these owners increase, and I think Yali was talking about in the comments earlier, when the clubs are worth in billions, these are the only kind of people who can afford clubs, right? As these people increase, aren't they going to say more and more that's, hey, yes, there should be no regulation? And then Gordo will be happy. He'll be like, welcome Super League, because that's basically what it is.
Well, if there's no rules, then what's the point of having a league, right? What's the point of competing?
The rule is like the purge of soccer. Yeah. The rule is there are no rules.
Well, then Man City should start their own purge league, which again leads to like the Super League concept, where and clubs rather, if they would really want to push for this kind of deal where they're really vociferous about their defense, every single Premier League club should refuse to play Man City as a protest, right? Like, listen, it's not fair that they can do all this, get all these backing, while meanwhile the likes of us and Arsenal, who've challenged them for the last almost 10 years, always have to mind their wages, mind what they're going to be paying players, mind their transfer stuff, and be like within 2-3 points, right? 2-3 points within taking down Man City, like a drunk driver. It's like, listen, like they're making analogies here, but my analogy for the entire situation was, it's kind of like us in FIFA, Tim. Like, you would know this. If we get beaten by a computer fair and square, we'd say that the game is the problem. Like, stupid game.
The game is the fucking problem.
Right.
It is. That's why
I think we can all agree on this, that the game is the problem.
That's why I play with I play with manual passing and manual shooting so that I can only blame myself.
Fair.
It's my but then it becomes a controller's issue. There's something wrong with the control.
It's just not sensitive enough. Yeah, there's always somebody else. There's always Football Flashback is like pumping out analogies over here like there's no tomorrow.
I got a couple of analogies. They're like a girlfriend. No, I'm just kidding.
But here's the thing, like that's my point. Like you're saying, like other teams should be suing City, but there's the City side of things, and that's end of that spectrum. I feel like it's gonna get more and more and more, because now City is saying this. Newcastle is like, he's not wrong. Am I right? Like they're looking around, and pretty soon, if you have 6-7 clubs on the same boat saying the same thing, that's when I can see things changing for the worse for us fans, because there's going to be more teams like City and Newcastle and stuff out there. There are only so many countries, but there are a lot of princes, Gordo, to go buy clubs.
Yeah, and that's why I think you had said earlier in this conversation this is the way forward. It's going to be more of this than less of this, that's for sure. And, as much as we like to think that they're doing the right thing, a little bit of it was like, oh, this is good for the Premier League, right? Like they're making money hand over fist, so we're going to let this slide for a couple of years. And now it's kind of gotten out of hand, and now they're starting to do something to it. But, much to Football Flashback's point, this could be years before we see any results. It'll go to trial or whatever, and there might be something coming out, but actual punishment might be years. There might be no punishment. It just might be, a dog and pony show where they're just parading him into the court just so that they can say, hey, we tried to do something. I mean, look at UEFA, what UEFA did to him. Banned him for 2 years and was like, oh, you know what? Maybe not. And then they win the Champions League. So it's like, I don't know. It's speculativism is everybody's kind of in on it. And it's if more and more clubs go this way, it's just better. It's easier for the Premier League to kind of look the other way. That's why I'm very, very much, and I don't think we should call it a Super League. I literally think we should just call it the Harlem Globetrotters League. They should do it.
Playing the Washington Generals.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it should be. It should be a couple of teams, and hey, here we go. Because back in the day when I was growing up, it was the steroid usage in baseball, right? And I always thought, like, you know what? Instead of doing this and stripping all these guys at the table, instead of the DH, there should be one designated steroid user on every team. And they should bat cleanup and just let them have at it, right? If there's guys that want to use that, then
let's see whose drugs are better too. Yeah. Like another avenue for the teams to compete in. So this is City creating their own target. Even teams like Madrid don't want City or PSG anywhere near them, because I think here's the difference. And like you can say the same thing about United that City is bitching about. United, regardless of who the owner is, I mean, there's a reason why they are valued the way they are in terms of like dollars. Same thing with Liverpool. Regardless of the owner, they will have fans and they will be worth something because they're a global brand, if you will. Same thing with Real. Real doesn't need shady dealings to basically make money because it's Real Madrid. Same thing with Barcelona and stuff. They have a fan base. You take the ownership out of City and PSG. PSG is slightly different because they've been kind of like the pillar of they haven't been this dominant, but they've always been the main. I mean, it's the Paris team in France, so they've
been competent, right?
Yeah, but City, like you take the ownership out of the value drops significantly because nobody looks at City and says, "Oh, that brand worldwide will make us a lot of money." That's why your evaluation is low. I mean, United still sells a ton despite sucking for year after year, which is why Glazers have not, minded the team not being great because the money keeps pouring in because it is a global brand like Liverpool is, regardless of the ownership. So, but I can see as these teams get bought out by these billionaire countries, I can see more and more saying, hey, why don't we do this? Okay, here's a good question. This is a great way to end it over here. Football Flashback, who obviously we all know just constantly randomly thinks thoughts. Here's a random thought of the morning by Football Flashback. If you guys could have this one job within sports, which would you choose? TV pundit, commentator, or show host like Match of the Day? Are these the options in the sports?
I feel like any job within sports. I feel like that's just like his suggestions, but I'll start and say I'd want to be an Adrian. A third choice goalkeeper, right? For a team that has two goalkeepers that are clearly better than me, and I'm being paid solid wages per week. Wages that will give me generational wealth.
Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I'd love. Yeah, Kirk Cousins as well. So listen, I'd love to be an Adrian.
That works. Yeah, you get to wear the jersey, right? So you're not one of those. You're not like a manager of baseball. Which don't even get started about that.
You would want to play, wouldn't you?
He does. He'll get to play every once in a while.
I give a solid performance every training, Tim.
Yeah.
Like I keep the goalkeeper.
Wait. I mean, he just opened the world and said, pick a job. You didn't pick Alisson's job, and you picked Adrian's.
That's a lot of pressure.
Alisson has so much pressure, bro.
Yeah,
like he's the best goalkeeper in the world. Like I don't want to have the pressure on my shoulders of reinforcing the reputation of the best goalkeeper in the world every single weekend. Like I'd be there on the bench cheering my boys.
You're probably
and I'm being paid $80,000 a week, Tim, to be a glorified cheerleader. Like,
who was that changed into the kit to lift the trophy? Who the heck was that? Oh man, was it? It was somebody that we all hate. It was either Fernandez or something. Like didn't play a minute and then changed into the kit to lift the trophy. That would be John on the sideline.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, Adrian wishes he was making that much as a third choice goalkeeper. I mean, I don't know. But anything is probably still gonna make more than all of us combined as a third choice goalkeeper. So there is that. Okay, he didn't mean one of these three. He didn't just give us any job.
Okay.
Pundits, commentator, or show host?
I'll let Gordo start.
I'd say show host because I think you have a little bit more freedom. You can also
No, it's not as
give your
glorified as it looks, bro.
you can give your analysis afterwards, right? Because like sometimes commentators, especially like somebody like me, as you guys know, we don't script this, so like I'll just say something random and then I'll get fired for it. Like I'll say, oh, it's like your girlfriend giving you, whatever. And boop, there I go, I'm gone. So at least if I'm a
Hey, at
if I'm a
TV,
show
you had the
host,
5-second advantage, though. The moment you say that, they were like, oh! just like running to the button and just,
yeah.
God damn.
So-
Or when you talk, somebody's probably with their finger on the button ready to go anyway. But so
If
you're going with the show host, huh?
Yeah, but if I could be anybody, I would be Chelsea's manager, right? Because you don't actually have to win any games. And then your contract is immense, and then you get bought out, and so then you don't actually have a job, but then you still get paid for the rest of your 4 years. So that I'd be Chelsea's manager if I could.
Football Flashback says, wait, you guys don't script your shows on here? No, there'll be no scripting. We're too lazy to script. Well, I know I'm too lazy to script, so let me speak on behalf of myself. I'm too lazy to script. We pick some headlines, but there are some in
5
there
minutes
that
before.
I did not even bring
5
up.
minutes before.
It's literally like 9:55 or 8:55, and we're like, oh
Well,
shit!
let's put it this way. We have a playbook, but we are at our best when we get out of the pocket and scramble. The Michael Vick of the Michael Vick of morning shows. We actually, the funny thing is, the other day somebody told Victor the same thing. They thought our Monday night podcast and stuff was scripted too, whereas we kind of go where the conversation goes and what people ask and stuff. I mean, I didn't come today and be like, hey, Football Flashback will ask us if I want to be a pundit or commentator. I can feel it. Like,
I think it's because that Monday show, like Gally and Bix are like really good at articulating what they say. So
could
it
be,
seems-
yes. I have to keep cutting Gally because Gally can go 5 minutes straight on a thought. Like Gally is like that wind-up toy. If you give him one thing and pull the string, he'll just keep going, man. He can go. Yeah, definitely.
He's got an Energizer battery on. Like it's a while before it turns off. Right?
So wait, so you picked the show host, John. What do you have?
Yeah, probably show host as well because I'm afraid of what I'm gonna say, especially in a formal setting. Like again, I'm kind of piggybacking off Gordo here, which is why I love this show, where we could obviously we can say whatever we want within reason, right? Within reason, of course. Obviously, we're not saying some shit that's gonna get the channel banned or stuff like that. Because I legit think Tim would come over to my
Gordo's
house.
testing the boundaries, that's for sure.
Right, because I feel like if we do that, Tim would come over to my house and literally murder my ass. But then that's another question, and that's another story. But with TV, I feel like it's super regulated. Like you can, and to Football Flashback's point, like it's super scripted. Like, listen, and I am not ashamed to admit this. It took me a while to realize that American, sports debate shows were scripted. Like the moment I realized this was only a few years ago when Max Kellerman said he'd have Andre Iguodala in the clutch over Steph Curry all day long. I was like, you seriously can't believe that. Then I was like, okay, listen, this is kind of scripted.
I think like when you look at ESPN and stuff, it's more like debate club for sport.
But then it's a scripted debate where beforehand what your argument's going to be.
It's a debate club. Like even if you don't believe in it, you got to just stick with it and
see
how you can defend it, kind of a deal.
But the commentators sometimes, like that's the problem with me, is they're always just like they say the most obvious things, right?
I'm always torn on this. I am very torn on this. Only because when I came here, by the way, Gally says the show is not brought to you by Michael Vick or his past friend. No, this is only.
We're good on the field, Vick. Michael Vick. We don't do the other Michael Vick activity.
What is that? What is all that barking in the background, Tim? Don't worry about it. I think here's why. Because when I came to the U.S. For college, it was like the junior year, I didn't know anything about football. And I always go back to this. I learned a lot by the way, Michael, these two over here, trust me, nobody wants to watch Stitch and Leo fight because they don't even know how to. But so when I came in and I started watching football, I knew absolutely nothing. And I was like, what is this craziness kind of a deal? And at the time, I watched a lot. And John Madden, that's when John Madden was, like the man in terms of being like the commentator, like the second in what is that called? I mean, I guess not commentator, but you know what I mean.
Color commentator.
Yes, the color commentary. And he would say to a regular American the most obvious shit, because people would always criticize him for it was the most obvious shit. But I learned shitloads because it was not obvious to me. Because I was like, oh, okay, I get it and stuff. And now, yes, I get the same thing now that I know the sports, where I'm like, you know.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, if you look at it, that's why I don't know what you guys think, but I really like Dixon and Lasso and stuff like that. I know sometimes they say stuff that we don't agree with and all that kind of stuff. That is fine, but I like how they at times teach the game. Maybe because I'm a defender and I can't relate because they always give the defender like the back perspective and stuff.
Yeah,
I don't mind.
Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't mind them, honestly, because listen, obviously I haven't been watching the sport as long as, let's say, YouTube, and sometimes every day I'm still learning.
What's that fucking supposed to mean?
No, nothing. I just started watching 12 years ago. That's all I meant, Tim. That's all I meant.
Don't piss
I'm gonna get murdered tonight, am I? I'm gonna get murdered tonight.
Yeah, watch your back. I'll send my Turkish guys over there with a chainsaw. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, keep going.
No, I don't mind them at all. Like, I know people like have some criticisms for them, especially some of their credentials. Where, Lasso was a player for X team at this time. They weren't really that good. What's his name? Robbie Earl wasn't. Robbie Mustoe wasn't really as prestigious as he would be. But I feel like sometimes the best perspective in terms of analyzing a team and analyzing the game is if you're on the bench rather than a star player on the field, because I feel like you get tunnel vision sometimes there where you're only, like, let's say if you're in basketball, you're a scorer, like all you do is score. So you wouldn't necessarily know how a defender would feel in that position of trying to defend you to score or stuff like that. So it's a valuable perspective. And listen, the more you get to and kind of enhance your knowledge, the better. And even if you kind of know what they're saying, there's like this person who probably doesn't know what it is, and it's valuable to them. So that's kind of how I approach it. If I kind of went on a tangent there, but I hope it made sense.
Well, it's John Oliver in his Men in Blazers interview was talking about Jurgen, and like every once in a while you get the players. This was a quote from him. It's like every once in a while you get the players where you're like, his brain knew what to do, but his feet didn't. But like with Klopp, like you actually believe that because he was a shit player. Yeah. He was not very good at all, but like he was able to be able to see it from a different point of view. And like to John's point, it doesn't always take the best player, because even sometimes like I watch like Thierry Henry on those like UEFA nights for CBS, and it's just like he was so talented that some of the really simple, obvious things to him are next level, and he's not bringing that stuff up because he doesn't know how to look at it from the layman's point of view. He's looking at it, he's playing 4D chess and we're all watching checkers. So it's I think sometimes you do get that with some of the players. So
and I think that's why sometimes those guys don't make great managers too, because they don't even know how to teach it because it came natural to them in a way. Like like things like finishing or whatever it is that they're really good at naturally. Like sometimes that stuff is hard to teach. I mean, now that John is in the business world training interns and stuff like that. I mean, I found in the past, I don't know, like I went to school for like business and like finance and stuff, and I really thought I didn't learn shit in college. I was like, I think I knew all of this before, like for 4 years, right? But they bang that stuff like business thinking into your head literally for 4 years that you probably don't even recognize. And I realized that afterwards when I would try to train somebody who had no like business or any college experience and stuff, and things that were very obvious to me was not obvious to that person. And that's like an adjustment, because you were like, how are you not seeing this that I'm seeing? And because it's like a different perspective. And I think it's the same thing where if it comes natural to you, it's hard to teach to somebody else because you were never taught, maybe, or it's because it was your natural time, especially like a guy like Henry and like finishing and stuff like that. So, I mean, some things are just can't be taught. Someone with a PhD doesn't necessarily make you a good teacher, and that's the thing. That's another thing. Like knowing is not always. I mean, teaching is a skill as well, and that's why I think. But I think when it's natural to you, like PhD is not natural. You had to go like get it and stuff like that. But like it's certain things, if it's natural to you, I find it's a lot harder to teach. But I would not say like the commentator things, that's a tough gig, man. You got to kind of like come up with shit on the fly and stuff like that. I will take the pundits. I mean, the show host is fine too, but since it's to go different, I would probably take pundit because, as we all know, you can never be fucking wrong.
Yeah,
you can say whatever the hell you want and act like you didn't say it last week, and then just totally flip, and whatever works, and you get to, you get to travel, go to games all game long. You're there. Yeah, there's a production meeting and stuff, but 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after, take my check and go home.
and there's always an attractive female who knows what she's talking about. So that's a perk too.
I don't know. Let's not get ourselves in trouble over here. we're almost at the end over here. Let's not get in trouble. Ain't you watching? Damn it. That is why Michael Jordan was an awful coach.
I am happily married.
Easy. Yes. Go ahead, Gordo.
No, I'm happily married.
Yes, there we go. And John is an available bachelor, people. So go with it. Are you guys watching any international these friendlies and stuff like that? Anything? Like you didn't watch our boys and stuff like that? I watched 2K yesterday, but
I was gonna bring up Trent's performance if we had time, and I think he played midfield. Listen,
bring it, John.
He had a goal, ran the game. Just saying, he ran the game.
Yeah, he did. I mean, there was there was like a 4-second clip I watched. I heard everyone say that it was like phenomenal, his performance. I didn't watch it, and then I saw like a 5-second clip, and it just said like, "Show me another player in England who could do this," and he just like casually just hits like a reverse bend.
That pass from the right wing, right?
And I was like, all right, now I'm going to watch the highlights because that was, he just looked like he was in his element.
Players who like passes by getting on top of the ball,
mm-hmm.
so the ball get, you know what I mean? Like a lot of backs will get underneath the ball, so there's a lot more of like a curvature. So obviously it takes longer for the ball to get there, and if you're doing a diagonal, it gives more time to the back to kind of recover. You rarely have guys like him who can hit the ball on top. Like Thiago could do that as well. Hit the ball on the top. So like it's almost like curves down and goes to that diagonal a lot faster. And I think it makes it like 10 times more effective because then it's like a lot harder for defense to ship. Yeah, that pass he sends, I mean, it's just freaking ridiculous. I didn't watch it either, but Gally says he ran the game in the second half when he moved to right back. DC, thanks, Gally. He wasn't that great first half in midfield and often was caught out of position. See, I don't know. If you find the system, I am not against him playing midfield like John thinks. I just, in the current system, I just could not find one spot similar to, I couldn't find a spot in this midfield for Coutinho, as great of a player as was. It's not about skill. It's like didn't suit him. I don't know if Arnie would be able to come up with a spot where we can kind of get the best out of him and cover his weaknesses.
I feel like people always go with either the 6, one of those double pivot midfielders, because we're obviously, this is assuming he's going to go with a 4-2-3-1, right? Either one of those double pivot midfielders or right back. I say an underrated shout is the 10 in that 4-2-3-1, because let's be real, in terms of a pure playmaker in the squad, like wherever he is on the pitch, you'd kind of back Trent to make something happen there. And if he plays as a 10, he doesn't have the responsibility of going back and defending because 10s never do, right? And if you're talking about...
Well, 10s never did.
Yeah, they never did.
They kind of have 2. That's why you don't have 10s anymore. Well, right. Like the way we used to, I should say.
Yeah, we used to, but then in that center position, in that middle of the 3, the 4-2-3-1, I feel like could be a good shout, or even that right side of the 4-2-3-1. I don't know, just tossing out ideas here. Because
I worry about him as a 6, and I will always have because he can't get out of position.
Because the argument about it is defensive responsibility, right? Like, what if we actually move him to some positions who don't really have as much defensive responsibility, which is either that middle of the 3 or the right side of that 3 in the 4-2-3-1. Just a thought.
I know what you think, Gordo, but in some ways, I feel like the more you push him up the field, the less effective he is. He has to come back to get the ball because that diagonal is worthless if you're a winger.
Yeah, it's what makes him good is his position. And the same thing with moving him inside the 6 is like he's a natural winger. So when you give him space on his back that he normally doesn't have, you know, your brain does definitely shut off. I know we talk about it all the time on here, and I'm beating a dead horse from things that I've probably repeated on every podcast. But when you move a player into another position,
about that girlfriend again.
But when you move a player in another position and you have like that different like fields, the spatial awareness changes, and sometimes your brain is still working like, oh, I've got the line to my back, I'm fine. And then you've got 6 other players behind you, and you're not even paying attention to them because you're really only ever focused on, you know, looking to your left. So I think it is like where he's at on the field makes him good because that's how his game is adapted. I felt like it was a situation this year of not being fully fit and also kind of getting in his head that he was going to go into midfield and kind of like lax his defensive responsibilities, but hopefully that can change because I do think he's a better wing back, and I think you get yourself a good solid cover in the center and you really don't need him to come back because like we talked about it the whole time, you know, like part of the reason that you could ignore his defensive lapses was because Verge, we had the cover for that, and it wasn't as exposed as often. And as everyone knows, if you score goals, if you make assists, no one really cares about how crap of a game you had. You know, as long as you don't like blow the whole thing. If you're getting 2 assists a game, you know, everyone's going to look the other way. I always like it's the Ronaldo of the 2021 or 2002 France. Well, France was 98, so it would have been 98 World Cup. Ronaldo. He's got off. If you watch all the Brazil games, it's pretty much trash. And then he
fucking poked against Turkey. Thanks for bringing these memories. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Scores a goal, wins the game, and everyone's like, he's one of the best players in the world.
Yeah.
And they're just like, you know, people just forget about your crap.
When Henderson was in midfield, he was the best right back going forward. Not sure why we're looking for more industry from the guys in front of him. I think the 4-2-3-1 helps in that sense. I think the biggest task is reselling him on being a right back because I do feel like we put midfield in his head, and that's why his defending has gone even further. But when you do a 4-2-3-1, and if the right side of that 2 is like, hey, man, you're going to stay back because this guy is going to push up, then you got covered. Like, then the defensive. But my thing with Trent has always been defensively, it is not a matter of him being out of position as much when he's a right back. It's more about when he's in position, every give and go, he loses his guy. I mean, it's just like very mind-boggling, or the back post guy and stuff like that.
Which is why I'm kind of advocating for
I got
to move him out of those situations as much as we can. You know,
it's more like defensive awareness, I guess, is my bigger concern. But like Gally was saying, it did actually work when, you know, we did have Henderson covered. I mean, it wasn't as exposed like you were saying, Gordo, as of like we've seen recently. It's not like but part of it is I think his awareness has gone down even more once he had, you know, a concept of being able to be the midfield guy. Like it was like, yeah, this defense thing is overrated anyway. I should be a midfielder kind of thing. Yeah, that's biggest task of, you know, we always talk about him with Nunez and stuff, but biggest task of Arne is probably also reselling Trent on being a right back, because I do feel like that's still the best position for him. But we shall see. I'm sure Arne will eventually talk. Or maybe he'll get just fired before he even gets the chance to do a press conference or something like that. But hopefully by Friday, he will have talked, or maybe even tomorrow, so the boys tomorrow night can talk about it. So they'll be on tomorrow, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. Do tune in for that. Obviously, no fantasy show during the off season. Those boys will probably start late in the summer to help you guys draft and all that kind of stuff. Gally and Matush will be doing that. But thank you, gentlemen, and thanks as always to all those commenting, liking, and stuff like that. I always ask, but please, please, please do go spread the words, grab somebody by the ear, and say, go follow these guys because they need generational wealth. And they don't script, most importantly. So we'll see you guys on Friday. Take care.